Wonderful. I think we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live video from BoysTown Parenting. My name is Gabby, and I am your host. We go live here on BoysTown Parenting every month with Bridget Barnes, as well as an array of some of our other experts at BoysTown, from behavioral health, the BoysTown Press, all different areas, to talk about a different parenting topic to help you parents at home navigate the everyday struggles of parenting and the highs and lows that come with it. So today we're talking about a topic that I'm sure is top of mind for a lot of parents out there, as May is the season of graduation and seniors are getting ready to head out to college and be on their own for the first time. So we're going to be discussing all about how to transition during that time and some key conversations to have with your teenager before they start their next chapter. We're joined here today with Bridget Barnes. Bridget, how are you doing?
I'm great, Gabby. Thanks for asking. We're super excited about this conversation as well. And especially, like you say, the time of year. But not everybody is leaving right away. So there is some transition that parents will have to make. I and my team conduct parenting classes here in Nebraska, but we have classes available to parents all across the country. And now that we're online, lots of parents can get us at various different locations. So they just have to go up to the BoysTown website and push on parenting.org, and you'll get to classes, and you can get to any of our classes where we'll have more conversations like these.
Yes, of course. And we'll have all of that info linked in the comments so you can enter your zip code and sign it up for a Common Sense Parenting class near you, or as well as online, as Bridget mentioned. So Bridget, share with us more about your work at BoysTown, and specifically what drew you to focus on supporting parents.
I hear your dog, and we talked earlier that he was going to start barking right when we started talking. I love that. I love it. It's right on cue. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I've been working at BoysTown for several decades, to be quite honest with you, in various different capacities. But my first love has been Common Sense Parenting, because I was one of the persons that helped to develop this evidence-based program and one of the co-authors on the book. So I have a lot of investment in helping parents help their children grow and learn. And lots of parents want that help. And I've talked to people all over the world, and many parents have the same issues, regardless of their background. We all want our kids to grow up healthy and happy, and to know that we're using the right skills that work for us versus against us. And so the Common Sense Parenting program gives parents those tools. Like I said earlier, you can go to an in-person class or an online class. Probably 80% of what we do now is online, at least for my site, but there's plenty of sites all across the country.
Awesome. All right. So before we jump into, what are those key conversations to have with our teenager as they're kind of preparing to transition, really with any conversation and starting that in the home with our child of any age, right. Some parents might think, okay, there's something I need to bring up to my child, and I might be feeling a little bit uncomfortable or a little nervous bringing it up if they're not sure how to begin that conversation. So what is a good way to make these talks feel more natural and less intimidating?
Yeah, I think of it as having like small talk, talking tiny little bits and pieces, not having the big conversation or the one-time conversation. It's a series of small talks with children about, that are very purposeful. And I would start sooner than later. If you're 2 years out, that's good. A year out, that's good. So having lots of little tiny conversations, and those conversations that you're having, listen more than you lecture. Let your child tell you what they need or what they're afraid of, what their concerns are, and try not to project your fear on them while you're having those conversations. It's important not to do that, because then the child begins to second guess if they're capable or of moving out. but really listen more and have lots of talks would be my suggestion. And every kid is a little bit different. Some children need a little more support, a little more guidance than other kids. So one shoe doesn't fit all in this particular case. You'll have to kind of fill your kid out and really watch what you convey in your body language and the way you talk of your own fears on your child. Would be my suggestion. And if you really still struggle, going to our parenting.org site to ask the experts some questions might be a good place to start if you're still a little vague about how to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when we think about moving out, whether it be, going to college or moving on to a career, what are some of those key topics that parents should talk about with their kids beforehand?
So many. I remember having those kind of concerns for my kids when they moved out. All of us want to think about financial preparation, budgeting, of course, the, housing and, fostering open conversations, and what kind of strategies that you can use to help kids find resources or get support that they might need in making those kind of decisions. There's wonderful little books that you can get on financial preparation. And I would definitely have kids start thinking about those things and practicing those skills, not just talking about that, but actually kind of shaping them toward taking over some of those responsibilities by giving them something to budget or to, a task to do that they have to think about the financial part of that. And we do think about finance and budget and housing and all that, but sometimes we don't think about talking, Gabby, with their kids in regards to emotional support and relationships that can get in the way of those financial and budget decisions that they make. They want to go to the big game or, go to this concert and they have to pay their light bill and they're making decisions that are not really good based on the relationships they have, or that they haven't had a lot of contact with the outside world that's not their close family or friends that are really working to support them. There are people out there that are kind of working to undo you. So you kind of have to have those conversations about developing an inner relationships, and a little bit outer, people that you work with, and then people who are at a distance. They're not people who get to influence you and how much input they have on your life. Sometimes we let people in our lives and make decisions for us that shouldn't be in that inner circle. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying when I say that?
Definitely.
Yeah. Did your parents have that kind of conversation with you about emotional supports, or did they just kind of, I think we all get the financial and housing and, parents hear about that, but we don't always talk about those emotional and relationship supports.
No. And totally, even if you have a child who, let's say they're going to a 2-year college, 4-year college, they might not even be going to college out of state, and they might know people if that's the path that they're choosing. And still, you go to college and you're in just a whole new environment with all new people that, you're focused so much on making friends, maintaining relationships. And, when exactly what you're saying, a lot of parents might think, oh my goodness, my child is heading off and they're going to have all this free reign wherever they go to, spend money in the way that they want, if they have it. For one example, like my dorm, I remember my freshman year of college, it was like a 10-story dorm, but then the bottom, there was a little like C-store, convenience store that sold like snacks and pop and a bunch of things. And I just remember like people were going and spending money there like every night, or going out, getting takeout all the time. And I just thought it was, I had a job since I was 16. So I had my own money that I was working with and saving and everything like that. But I was like, we have the, like the dorm, the food hall, the dining hall.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why are people going crazy at this little C-store? One of
those. They haven't had that opportunity, and they're like, wow, I get to buy all the snacks my mom wouldn't let me have, and so they're of course, doing all those things they weren't allowed to do. But if you start sooner and letting kids budget and make decisions and giving them little tasks and responsibilities before they ever move out, before they're in the dorm or they're off to military for that
Yeah.
matter,
Mhm.
or getting a job and living on their own, being able to take on some of those tasks, they probably would make better decisions because they practiced that while they were still at home.
Yeah.
But I always am concerned about, we think our kids are going to have friends and they're going to be out there with a lot of people, but there's also isolation in a crowd,
Mhm.
right? I remember going off to college and being at a Big Ten university, and I was an RA, but I still had so much going on that I felt quite isolated from people because one thing, I was an RA, and so I couldn't just be with the group and run around doing everything everybody else is doing. So I think that it's important for us to make sure our kids have those emotional supports, relationship supports, and not take it for granted. Because they can begin to feel depression when they're away from us, and isolation, even in a crowd.
Definitely. And especially, with May being Mental Health Month and being such a big focus. I was just talking with BoysTown Behavioral Health a couple of
Mhm.
days ago, and they were telling me, our clinic is super busy right now because we've got seniors that are graduating who maybe have had a really, a good fair time in high school and have been pretty good overall. But then now that graduation is creeping up, they are starting to feel anxiety, or maybe
Mhm.
they have felt anxiety and depression before during high school, and it is getting more severe. So
Mhm.
that's definitely a top concern. And I know a lot of schools, I went to the University of Nebraska Lincoln, so close by if anyone's local is watching, but they offered, and I believe they still do this, but we got, I believe, 3 visits to like the
Mhm.
mental health clinic on campus that were
Mhm.
totally free. So if, especially, in those first 2 semesters when
Mhm.
everything is new and everything is so overwhelming, and
Mhm.
definitely is something to take advantage of.
Well, that's why we have the Boys Town hotline here. Why we have, your life, your voice, for young people, young adults, teens to learn to talk to other people and to reach out and start that mom and dad sooner than later. Don't let your kids leave out of your house before you hook them up. That there's places that you can talk to people. You might not always be able to get your dad and I or feel comfortable talking to your dad and I,
Yeah.
but there are places that you can call and reach out to someone, and they will listen to you day or night, and that we trust, and that you can get some good advice, because sometimes you reach out to your friends and they tell you to do crazy things, right? But parents have to kind of look for the signs too, when their
Right.
children might be showing them they have some emotional anxiety about moving out, that begin to make them feel like retreating or afraid. If parents notice that, you know, they have some poor relationships when they're about to move out with someone that is kind of not healthy, uh, being aware of that and getting your kids some support for making better decisions in relationships, surrounding themselves with people that lift them up them versus pull them down. Just kind of being a little bit more aware of what your kiddo might be needing, or some signs that say they're not ready or they're afraid, and opening that door of, have a conversation with me. I'm not going to judge you. There's no judgment here about this, or leading them to someone else if you're not feeling that you can have, or your kid is willing to have that conversation through the hotline, through therapists, through, your school, if there's supports there. But reach out wherever you can is my advice for that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I know some parents might be watching this and they might be concerned of, if my child is at school or is far away in military job, and
Mhm.
maybe I don't talk to them as much as I do when they're under my roof and I see them every day, how am I going to know if my child is struggling?
Mhm. Right. Well, conversations are important. I mean, if you had your door open in conversations while uh, your kid was with you, and I used to tell you that I had these little dates with my son, just little 15-minute dates, just always there, that he knew the door was open. And then when your child leaves, they just get used to having that they can call you at any time, that they can have a conversation where you're just going to listen to them and not judge them, but try to guide them. I don't try to take on the responsibility either if my child has made a poor decision, but I do try to help them problem solve. Here are some solutions. Here are some ideals that, I can support you and hear them. Because sometimes it's not always fixing it for them. It's giving them the courage to face something and to make a decision that works for them, and just having you as that sounding board. But if you go in and fix it for them, then you better be able to fix it their whole lives. And that's not what we're aiming for. We want them to feel like, I can face a challenge. I can make a mistake. And I can do the wrong thing and fall, but I can get back up and brush myself off and go forward. And that really builds up your child, so that they are not just your child anymore. They're a young adult making decisions and have your support.
Yeah, do you have any recommendations for tools to kind of help them build up that resilience that they're definitely going to need, especially in early adulthood?
Exactly. Well, the BoysTown Press, not to pitch that, but we really do have books out there in the BoysTown Press, one called Boundaries that might be helpful for helping kids develop boundaries, one called Resiliency that are just built for kids in our catalog. There used to be a book that I really loved, and we don't have it anymore, so I feel hesitant to say, but it was called No Simple Rules for Dating My Daughter, that I had my son read. But it talked about helping kids understand the requirements for people in their inner circle, that face-to-face time you need to have. Because lots of time we have these relationships online, right? And we think this person is close to me. I'm going to tell them and share everything with this person online. And I'm like, no, that person should be in your outer circle. Someone you see on a constant face-to-face basis is in that inner circle, unless they're your family like me and I'm not talking to you as much, but I'm still that person you can trust, that you have that relationship with, that you feel close to. So I think you have to kind of review the do's and don'ts of relationships with your kids, because sometimes they think everybody's like me. I used to think that when I went to college, everyone's like me. And I'm like, not everybody is like me. And there's some do's and don'ts in regards to relationship, and signs of people grooming you to manipulate you that kids should be aware of. And those boundaries books gives parents those. So I would go up to our parenting.org if you feel like I don't have enough information, or to the BoysTown Press, you want to buy a book, and kind of open it up and start having that conversation with your kids about boundaries, relationship, resiliency, being okay with struggling, and recovering from those situations, that they can do that. So Pat Fryman here, who runs the behavioral health clinic, was doing a talk the other day on back shaping, he calls it. Have you ever heard him talk about this though? Anyway, it's just shaping a child to give them a little task, not the whole budget. Let's say you want them to learn about budgeting, and you have a kid who just loves to spend, would go right down to that canteen you were talking about and spend all their money, right? And starting them small on doing a small part of, you take care of the bigger part of the budget, but they do like 5% of the budget. And then you give them a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more, till eventually by the time they're moving out, they can do most of that budget. Maybe I hold on to 5% of it. And I really want to tell parents, learn from my mistake. My son got like a lot of money when he moved out, access to a lot of money. It was not a good move for him. And so some kids could have access to that money, but some kids really need to have an allowance place, a budget. This is how much money you have. These things are being automatically paid for. Set up some things like that until your kids can really get kind of a, grip on their ability and their responsibilities. So kind of know who your kid is. And too much access to too much too soon can be a problem for them, I think.
Right. Definitely. Another question for you, Bridget. And,
Yeah.
with so many of these conversations, they don't just happen this summer, right? We talk about, okay, let's talk about it, years in advance. When they're applying to go to college, when they're juniors, we can start talking about these now. But, when they have launched and they're there, some parents might be concerned of, am I overstepping too much? Am I being too involved in their lives now? Or am I not talking to them enough? Or how do I find that kind of sweet spot of being supportive but not overstepping?
Well, you and I both probably got those care packages, right? That our parents sent us. And those are always wonderful to get, where you can put a note or two like, love a phone call, or, with the popcorn and whatever else that you're going to put in there so they don't go down to the canteen and use up all their money. So, a care package, or nowadays with so much technology, sending a text message just to check in with a little cartoon on it would be fine. And respect your child's space and privacy. Don't just show up unannounced. I think it's not a good idea. I'd let your kid know that you're coming, so they're kind of prepared for you. Not to say that you can't, check on your child. Of course you should, but to say that have that respect, that they are young adults and they have their own place, and that you just won't come in. Now, I did early on have keys to my son's home, but he also had keys to my home, and for emergency or passcode numbers. And so I think that for emergency, I had the respect that in an emergency, we will use this key, but I will not just go in your house and go through your stuff. That's just not me. I wanted him to be responsible. And so early on, I know you're asking me, once they get out, what do you do? And those kind of things. The other thing, before I go back and talk about before we moved out, is that I didn't take any responsibility for his irresponsible behavior. So some parents go in and rescue and pay for things, and are paying for pretty much their kid to live outside the home. I mean, and everything. And we really worked on having a savings, having direct deposits, things that were being paid for. And then he had an allowance that he had when he moved out, and that kind of thing. But I think emotionally, I had to step away from my son a little bit before he moved out, or I wouldn't have had that kind of respect or distance. I would have said, these pictures go here and this couch should go over. I would have kind of moved in on him. And so we moved him down to the lower level, to the basement level, and put him in response. He was responsible for that entire area, making sure it stayed clean, that people could get through there. And we acted like little landlords, like, you forgot to pick up the trash, and did you make sure you put that out? And he was responsible for that area. And we packed up his stuff, so that he could know that distance. He wasn't in his room anymore. He was in this area. Just that physical distance created that relationship distance that we needed to do before he actually moved out, and we could see some things that he was good at and some things that he was not so good at in regards to taking responsibility for himself in that area.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think teenagers too, they're like, oh, I get to live in the basement. This is so cool. But then if you're adding a little bit more responsibility of, but now it's your basement that you maintain, like you would an apartment or a dorm room, then that's a good kind of warm up.
You got to clean the bathroom down there. Mom's not going to come down there and do that for you.
That's for you to clean, right, Bridget?
Yeah, exactly. But that's not for everybody. Some parents would go, no, I'm definitely not doing that. But I think that it got me and my husband into the headset that my son, that he is moving out. Here's the date. So we didn't do it so far ahead of time that I'm dealing with this for a whole year. I just, several months before he was moving out, he moved down there just to get that transition time, just for him to understand you're moving and this is a transition, so he could be ready, and that we were ready also.
Yeah. And I love what you said too of, there might be parents out there who are maybe paying college tuitions, or, even, I took out loans to go to school, but my dad had kind of gone through the process of getting those set up for me, and he ended up passing away while I was in college. So after that, I was like, I don't know. And I figured it out, but thinking back in that moment, I'm like, I wish that we would have sat down and been like, here's this loan that we're taking out for you, and you will pay this back after college, and kind of walked me through it as well. And even if it's not a loan, it could be, we're sitting down and, okay, here I'm, this is how I'm paying for the dorm, and this is what that costs. Even just to have like a conceptualization of it, of, this is what it is per semester. This is, if you take 16 credits, that equates to this cost. And kind of just having a knowledge of it, I think would be nice, even if you are a very generous parent out there that is helping your kid along with it.
You're absolutely right. If you can't afford it and you're being generous and you're taking care of all that, but that doesn't help your child learn anything. And then they become this adult who still hasn't learned that. And it's really crazy. Sometimes we don't have finance classes or how to budget ourselves in our high school courses, or even in college courses for that matter. And then you get out in the world, and it's kind of like the credit card people come after you when you're in college. Everybody wants to give you a credit card. And that can be detrimental to kids in regards to, ruining their credit long before they're even in the workforce. So definitely I would sit down, but some parents will tell me, Bridget, he's not listening. I mean, kids are thinking you want to sit down and have those conversations, but the child is not willing to have that. Yeah, they're totally checked out. And so sometimes just writing it all down, like this is where this is what that is, like a little journal, if you don't mind. And then, giving a copy of that to your kid, like this is where you're at. And, take a moment and look at that, or, having that.
Yeah. If you're taking loans out, or they're only doing some, once you get to senior year or whenever you're graduating, you might say, oh, golly, I didn't know I had that much that I needed to pay back. And so if it's a continued conversation throughout, even rent, this is applicable to many different situations.
Yeah, definitely. Whether it's the child's not going to college, they're just moving out, getting a job, or they're going to the military, or they're going to college, or they're going to stay with you for that matter. Right. I mean, let's say they move down to the basement and that's their world now. I mean, what does that mean? And how responsible am I for you? And what are our rules about living in the house? I mean, if I was renting to someone, my lower level, to someone else, not my child, what are the rules for living in the lower half of my home? And so I just think you have to kind of put that in writing, talk to the person, your child, about what are the rules and the do's and don'ts, and my respect for you as well in regards to living in the lower level of my house, or if you live away. I think having those conversations are important, and having more than just one conversation, because sometimes the child isn't listening, or we're not talking in a way that makes them want to listen. We're delivering a lecture or our fears about them moving out. So I think having lots of little conversations and listening more than you talk, you'll find out what your kid needs to know and what they don't know, and what support you're willing to give, and what ones you need to tell them, I'm not willing to do that. Once you move out, you're going to need to take over this responsibility. We're paying for your insurance now, but your car has been paid off, and now you're going to take on that responsibility, if that's the case. I know for a while we shared the phone. I blew up the phone. And, we didn't do that after a while, but, make mistakes, and you have to pay the price for those decisions. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's lots of parents going through this. I really, you're not alone. Know that, moms and dads, and the kiddos too. Know that, it's a new world. It's a kind of exploration. You should have some anxiety. Anxiety has got a bad rap. Sometimes it's okay to be a little anxious about something you don't know about. Yeah. And to share that concern, and not to tell everybody, oh, I know. If I had a dime for every time my son said, I know, I'd be so rich. But I would say, be okay with saying, I don't know. And getting help, whether you're the mom and dad or whether you're the child, get some help. And that's why we're here at BoysTown, to help you.
Yes. Well said. And keep us updated, parents. I know we covered a lot in this live between financial discussions and boundaries and emotional support. I know there's a lot of different areas to kind of have these ongoing conversations with your child before they move out. But just as Bridget said, we're here to support, whether it be through parenting.org or our Common Sense Parenting classes. We're going to link in the comments of this video all of those links so you can sign up for a Common Sense Parenting class with Bridget via your zip code or virtually. And they're not just for parents of teens. I know we're kind of talking about that with this live, but we do parenting classes for kids of all ages. We have support online for, from toddlers to teens, we like to say, and even before that with BoysTown Pediatrics. So whatever you need, we are here for you. And of course, we do these lives every month. So if there's another topic you want us to discuss, go ahead and let us know. And we're happy to cover it with our experts.
We'd love that. Please do. Send us a message about some topic we haven't talked about.
Oh man, we're going to dig back at least 5 years, Bridget, to find one. I'm sure there's probably something.
There's probably something we haven't said, but the parents can tell us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, we would. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Make sure you like this video and share it with a parent who has a teen moving out probably in the next few months. And hopefully that it will find their way and be helpful. And we'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.